Porchetta. This is the traditional famous Italian dish that's sure to be a showstopper at any friendly gathering. Mixed with the fragrant and freshest herbs you can find, and a moist, juicy, slow-cooked pork belly. The porchetta roast is both delicious and impressive. I'll also show you a foolproof way to perfect a crackly pork rind-like skin every single time. So let's go! A porchetta starts with the freshest herbs you can buy or find. Here I have some from my garden. I have some cilantro, some sage, some rosemary, thyme, and in any traditional recipe, parsley. After a good rinse, we're just going to chop these up. I'm putting the parsley and cilantro together first. Next we have our sage, and we're just cutting it into small pieces, almost dicing. Now for thyme, you can just pull off the leaves from the stems if you have relatively old thyme, and if you have very young thyme, you can even cut through the stems. But I generally just use the leaves. No stems, no sticks. And lastly, same thing with the rosemary. You can just pull off the leaves if you pull from tip to base. My rosemary stems have become quite woody, so I generally don't like to include them in any kind of recipe. I'll give the rosemary a quick chop, just make them into smaller pieces, and then combine with the rest of the herbs and give it a quick dice as well. It is so fragrant in here, and we'll just transfer these into a bowl and set them to the side for now. And now for the pork belly. Ain't she beautiful? You want one that has a nice amount of fat on it, and definitely with the skin on. This one has pretty uniform layers of fat and meat, which when rolled up will make a very nice looking porchetta. Let's talk about how to roll. So you want to roll it up pretty tight. You can see the skin is going to get caught inside the meat. Now when you cook this, you want the skin to be exposed to the exterior and be nice and crispy. If we rolled it up like this, see all that skin is inside, and that'll get rubbery and not great to eat. So for this big piece of porchetta or pork belly, we're gonna go ahead and remove that skin, and we can wrap that later on the outside. So I'm just taking a sharp knife. We're gonna gently remove this top layer of skin, being careful not to cut too much meat off. Every now and then you can test it to see if you're just to roll the lean portion. See how the skin, the fat, it's kind of butterflied here. If you were to do that, is there any fat that's going to lay on the inside? It looks like this is pretty good, right? Basically this fat is not going to be stuck on the inside. That flap of fat and skin is going to be cut around the outside. So that's what you want, right? So now you can see all the skin on the outside of the roll and lean is on the inside. So this is good enough. So, and this you can also season much more nicely. So next, just to make sure the seasoning can get in, let's cross hatch this a little bit, just slightly, every 1.5 inches or so. We're just scoring it so that seasoning can get onto the inside. It's a very big, thick piece of meat, so you don't have to worry about over seasoning. The season the inside. Use some kosher salt. Freshly ground pepper. So salt and pepper is a must. Diced cloves of garlic. I always use this pre-minced garlic. Do about 3 tablespoons there. In traditional Italian recipes, you use fennel powder. It's hard to come by, so here I'm just using fennel seed. But if you have fennel powder, please feel free to use that. Of course, all the fresh herbs that we just chopped. All that nice sage, rosemary, parsley, thyme. And I like a little bit of a coarse cut. It really adds to some of that texture. So at this point, you can rub it all in. Just use your hands, it's okay. If you have extra on your hand or that flap, well, you can do the underside of that flap as well. And while we have the flap open, let's go ahead and salt and pepper. Salt the underside of the skin as well. And last, but definitely not least, we're going to zest a lemon. And here I'm just using a microplane. And again, you only want the yellow skin, outside skin of the lemon. Once you get to the white part, that becomes bitter, so you don't want that pith. Now we're ready to roll. So again, we have this flap here, so that can go on the very inside. That way, you want to roll it quite tight. And look at that, perfect. This perfect seam. As fat comes up, you've got this nice fatty skin that can fold over. Beautiful. Now here you can either use you have butcher twine to tie it up, but then it kind of makes this kind of lumpy look. So some people will actually take butcher twine and sew it, which is much neater, but I don't have any sewing skills. So what I do is just take a skewer. If you have a metal skewer, great. I have these wooden skewers, and you can see from my picanha recipe, I use these instead of those metal swords. You just take a skewer, just kind of thread it through. And there's so much, there's a fat up top, fat on the bottom, portions of fat. So I start with the bottom, kind of at a diagonal until it pokes through. Just cut it in half. This side is attached, and then just take this and go through the other side at a diagonal. Top layer, bottom layer, and at a diagonal, and push it out at the end. Yep, there it is. And again, you can just break this off. And now it's nicely rolled. Here you go. Look at that. And you have the full surface of the skin to crisp up without the weird bumps, which I just like a cleaner look. So the last thing we'll do is just take this and transfer it to a vessel. Here I have a baking tray. There's a lot of moisture on the skin. You just wipe off all that excess moisture. And we're just gonna liberally salt the exterior. Not only will this somewhat season the outside, but it also helps dry out that skin, which is crucial for making it crispy. Okay, now we can put this in the fridge overnight. It's the next day and we're ready to bake at 350 degrees. For a roast this size, it could take between 3 and 4 hours. However, I just put a meat thermometer in there and look for around 150 to 155 degrees. As this rests, it will go up another 10 degrees or so to that 165 perfect temperature. And look at that, what a roast. That skin is completely dried out and it's still sizzling on the bottom. Now if you're making some sides, you can always throw in some potatoes or carrots about an hour before it's ready to go. Now that is one pretty piggy. After resting for 30 minutes, this porchetta is ready to eat. However, here's a foolproof way to make that skin crackly. Now there are many ways to make that skin crackly and crispy. You could finish it off under a broiler or rotisserie, and some people even use a blowtorch. But with all those methods, there's a possibility of burning that skin, and you want to preserve that as much as possible. So I found the best way and most foolproof way to get that crackly, crispy skin is a good old deep fry. Now to fit in my fry pot, I'm gonna need to slice this in half. It smells amazing in here. All those herbs and basically that sweet smell of bacon. And that cross section just looks amazing. Just heating up about 1/4 inch of oil. What you want is to be able to submerge that skin and deep fry the skin. But the inside is already cooked, so there's no need to deep fry the inside of the porchetta. Here's a beautiful half a porchetta. And you want strong tongs because you don't want to drop this in by accident. Now you do need to be careful when deep frying the porchetta, as there is moisture that might seep out and you might get some splatter. That's why I use a high-wall Dutch oven and only 1/4 inch of oil on the bottom. Even so, it might be helpful to have a screen in case any splatter comes out and you get a pop. We're also going to rotate this every minute to 2 minutes or so, just to make sure all sides are fried evenly. You can already start to see that gorgeous color. It's really browning and having that golden, crispy skin. You can also tell when it's ready to rotate when the bubbles start to become smaller and less pronounced. And once you rotate it, those bubbles will come right back as some of that moisture will seep into the oil. And look at that, the skin there, that is like chicharrones. A few more rotations and we're gonna have that perfect, crackly, crispy skin. After a total of about 10 minutes and rotating every minute and a half or so, we have our perfect chicharrone skin porchetta. Check that out. It's still crackling. I'm sure you can see the difference between this one. I mean, you can hear it crack. It's still bubbly and crackling. This is just hard. So let this rest. Let's take this out of the way. We can fry it as well. But let's look at this one. Still crackling. Still nicely cooked. Let's take this and cut her open. Oh, there's nothing like that crisp. It's music to my ears. And there you have it, a foolproof way to make crispy, crackly skin porchetta. It truly is a work of art. Can't wait to dig in. Let's give it a try. I can't get enough of that crackly skin. It's all about the contrast in textures, that crisp, crackly skin paired with a melt in your mouth, fatty piece of pork belly. And you can see that fragrant layer of herbs from our mixture. That pork is well seasoned, very tender. I mean, the herb flavor does really come through. Very tender, moist. And all that fat on the inside really creates the layers. You can taste it. And it's great pork belly. But the moment we're all waiting for. And that is that skin, that bubbly, crackly skin. Basically pork rinds or chicharrones on the outside of the pork. You still got that flavor, fat, moist on the inside. Here we go. You can hear that crunch and that texture. It's just so crackly. It is like putting a layer of pork rinds on the outside of some succulent, delicious pork. Best of both worlds. And there you go, a perfect porchetta with foolproof, crispy skin every single time. That's it for another video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a great day.